Kim and Kris are about to be hit with a federal RICO indictment, and it's going to make the Diddy case look like a parking ticket. Now, that's not my take, not my speculation. That's Ray J, live on camera, his eyes a little red, his voice a little shaky, telling his audience point blank that the feds are closing in. There's no polite hello, no upbeat intro music, just raw, unvarnished panic. And if you've been keeping up with how quickly the Diddy story escalated from whispers to full-blown Homeland Security raids, you know that the word worse sets an incredibly high, almost terrifying, bar to clear. So, tonight, we're diving into what the mainstream media seems hesitant to touch. We're going to dissect how a 20-year-old sex tape could potentially ensnare two of the most recognizable women on the planet in a racketeering case. We'll explore why Ray J insists he's the whistleblower, and what on earth worse than Diddy actually means when we're already talking about potential life sentences for the accused. This isn't a slow burn, folks. This story is moving at lightning speed. It all kicked off last Wednesday, around 2:13 a.m. Pacific time. Ray J went live, not for a sponsored post or with any kind of filter, but simply sitting in a dimly lit room, scrolling through his phone. Barely 30 seconds in, he just drops the bombshell: "I'm cooperating with the feds." The RICO case against Kim and Kris is sealed right now, but it's coming, and it's crazier than anything you've ever seen. His chat, naturally, thought he was just out of it, maybe a little drunk, but he wasn't. He doubled down, looking straight into the camera, saying, "Tell Kim to check her email. Tell Kris to kiss the empire goodbye." Then, he repeated the phrase that's now plastered across every single gossip blog and trending topic: "It's worse than Diddy." No real context, no official paperwork flashed on screen, just this stark claim that investigators apparently have receipts going back 15 years. Can you imagine the immediate fallout? Within minutes, those clips were ripped and uploaded to TikTok, collectively racking up 8 million views before the sun even thought about rising. The Kardashian team? They stayed absolutely silent, which, if you know anything about Hollywood, is usually the universal signal for lawyers hitting the mute button while they furiously calculate just how extensive the damage might be. By dawn, RICO had surged into the top 5 on Google Trends, a position it hadn't held since the Combs indictment first broke. It took just one line, from a reality star turned witness, to completely flip the entire news cycle on its head. It's wild, isn't it, how quickly things can change? So, let's rewind a bit, shall we? Back to 2007. That's when the infamous tape featuring Kim and Ray J hit the internet, distributed by Vivid Entertainment. Kim, as we all remember, sued, and ultimately settled for a reported $5 million. Just 5 months later, the family launched their juggernaut reality show, Keeping Up with the Kardashians. For years, the general public assumed it was the typical celebrity scandal playbook: a leak, a lawsuit, a quiet payoff, and then life moves on. But Ray J is now alleging something far more intricate. He claims there was a second, much smaller, highly confidential deal memo that never saw the light of day. This memo, he says, outlined lifetime royalty splits, hidden intellectual property rights, and, crucially, a clause that granted Kris Jenner final say on any future licensing. And here's where it gets really murky. According to Ray J, this memo was never fully disclosed to the IRS. Money was allegedly shuffled through at least 3 shell corporations registered in Delaware, and signatures, he claims, were encouraged under pressure. That one word, pressure, is what makes prosecutors' ears perk up. Why? Because if you're moving profits through an enterprise, and actively obscuring their origins, you're not just bending the rules, you're edging squarely into racketeering territory. Add to that alleged interstate wiring of funds, potential mail fraud involving licensing contracts, and a pattern of similar financial maneuvers that supposedly repeats across every single product line they've launched since, and suddenly, a 2007 sex tape isn't just a scandal. It starts looking a whole lot like Predicate Act No. 1 in a potentially 20-count indictment. That's the very skeleton federal agents need for a robust RICO narrative: 2 or more related crimes, committed over a 10-year period, all within the same criminal enterprise. Ray J confidently asserts he has the thumb drives, the emails, and even the forensic accountant who can meticulously trace every single dollar. Now, whether that evidence holds up under the intense scrutiny of discovery is a huge question mark, of course, but it's certainly enough to get a grand jury impaneled and start asking some very uncomfortable questions. Let's be crystal clear about the benchmark here. Sean Combs, Diddy, is currently staring down potential life imprisonment based on allegations that include sex trafficking, forced labor, and narcotics distribution across state lines. When Ray J says this case is worse, he's not talking about body counts or the sheer brutality of the alleged crimes. He's talking about the scale of the co-conspirators and the sheer financial exposure involved. Diddy's case, as serious as it is, names a handful of close associates. Ray J, however, alleges that the Kardashian-Jenner orbit involves dozens, and I mean dozens, of individuals and entities, managers, accountants, brand representation firms, even a trustee at the Children's Wealth Fund. If federal prosecutors can successfully prove that all those seemingly disparate entities actually formed a single, cohesive criminal enterprise, then every single dollar of the family's reported $2 billion fortune could become forfeitable. Think about that for a second. Even worse, RICO provisions are incredibly powerful. They allow for jury instructions that permit the government to freeze assets the literal moment an indictment drops. We're talking no houses, no cars, no access to stock portfolios. Imagine the headlines, Kim Kardashian can't even cash a check. That kind of reputational and financial devastation is precisely why attorneys often refer to RICO as the Kingslayer statute. It wasn't designed just to send individuals to prison. It was built to systematically dismantle entire criminal organizations. If prosecutors truly buy into Ray J's alleged paperwork, Kris Jenner could find herself in the classic mob boss predicament, facing sentencing not just for the acts she personally ordered, but for every single act her subordinates committed in furtherance of the alleged scheme. Mandatory minimums in RICO cases stack up terrifyingly fast, and those 20-year caps per count? They can quickly turn into a life sentence. That, my friends, is the absolute nightmare scenario Ray J is peddling, and it's precisely why he keeps repeating worse than Diddy like it's some kind of dark mantra. Now, to be fair, he hasn't exactly held up actual, signed contracts to the camera during his live streams. We haven't seen the full smoking gun, so to speak, but he has teased screenshots. These images, though partially blurred, allegedly show routing numbers, signatures that appear to match Kris Jenner's publicly filed deeds, and email timestamps that align perfectly with the week the infamous tape originally leaked. And here's where it gets interesting. Independent cyber trackers, the kind who really know their stuff, have reportedly verified the cryptographic hashes on those screenshots against Wayback Machine archives. The metadata seems to line up, which means, at the very least, these aren't fresh photoshopped fakes. They appear to be authentic digital artifacts from that period. Ray J also claims he went a step further, alleging he wore a wire during a meeting last year with a former business manager. If that's true, a consensual recording like that is pure gold for federal prosecutors. It's the kind of direct evidence they absolutely love to play for a jury. Then there's the forensic accounting aspect. He mentions a firm, Henley & Draxler, which he says traced a staggering $28 million through Cayman Islands accounts, with the money eventually circling back to Jenner Communications. If all these pieces connect, the pattern of alleged crimes, the existence of an enterprise, and the illicit proceeds, you've got the foundational elements a RICO case needs. Of course, without a public indictment, prosecutors aren't obligated to confirm any of this. They won't comment on ongoing investigations. But here's the kicker. Ray J's attorney, a former federal racketeering prosecutor himself, has been conspicuously radio silent since these live streams started. In legal circles, that usually signals that serious cooperation talks are underway. It's a pretty well-known adage, when the lawyer stops talking, their client has usually already said too much. If you're tired of mainstream outlets hedging their bets and want the real, unfiltered updates the minute they happen, then do yourself a favor and tap that subscribe button. We're here to break down the latest filings and developments as they hit Pacer, and trust me, there's a whole lot more coming down the pipeline. So, what's the federal timeline look like? If a sealed indictment truly exists, it generally stays under wraps for a reason, typically until arrests can be coordinated simultaneously. That could mean next week, or it could mean next year. It's notoriously unpredictable. However, civil signals often precede criminal ones. We're talking about things like sudden asset relocations, the quiet dissolution of shell companies, or large, ostensibly charitable transfers of wealth. These are classic moves in what's known as wealth defense. Interestingly, Kim Kardashian recently shifted ownership of her skincare line into an irrevocable trust just last month. And Kris Jenner, not to be outdone, restructured Jenner Communications into a member-managed LLC in Delaware a mere 2 weeks ago. On their own, these could be perfectly innocent, savvy business moves. But when you put them together, defense attorneys often call that pattern consciousness of guilt. Meanwhile, Ray J's live streams show no signs of stopping. Each one seems to drop new breadcrumbs, names of alleged co-conspirators, specific dates of offshore wire transfers, and he even mentioned a locker number at LAX where he claims a copy of the original drive is stashed in case something happens to me. The feds haven't denied his cooperation, which, in legalese, essentially means they're perfectly happy for the public to keep speculating and for the pressure to mount. Every new tease, every new tidbit, tightens that psychological vice. Grand jury targets, especially in RICO cases, often start to flip once they realize a cooperating witness is broadcasting their secrets nightly nightly to an audience larger than most cable news shows. If just one domino falls, if one person cuts a plea deal, that enterprise narrative starts to write itself. Now, let's inject a dose of legal reality here. None of this, absolutely none of it, guarantees a conviction. To successfully prove a RICO case, federal prosecutors have to demonstrate that Kim and Kris personally agreed to participate in this alleged criminal enterprise, and crucially, that they knew about the overarching conspiracy. Good luck, for instance, proving that a 26-year-old Kim Kardashian was intimately familiar with the intricacies of Delaware corporate law. The defense will undoubtedly argue that these are savvy businesswomen, not hardened racketeers, that they simply followed attorney advice, filed their taxes in good faith, and that any alleged omission was purely clerical. Plus, let's not forget that tape's release also massively benefited Ray J. He made millions from it. So, his potential motive to lie or exaggerate could be a goldmine for cross-examination. However, here's the sobering truth. Federal prosecutors don't typically bring racketeering cases unless they're incredibly confident they can win. The conviction rate for federal RICO charges hovers stubbornly near 90%. So, if you ever see an indictment unsealed, you should assume they believe they have the paperwork, the witnesses, and the evidence absolutely locked down. The bottom line is this: Ray J's audacious claim of worse than Diddy isn't legally impossible, but it remains highly speculative until a jury actually returns a verdict. Right now, more than anything, it's a full-blown PR war, and it seems Ray J is winning the narrative battle, largely because the Kardashians' legal team hasn't yet found a countermove that doesn't inadvertently amplify his already explosive story. Is this the scandal that finally punctures the seemingly impenetrable Kardashian armor, or is Ray J simply orchestrating the ultimate, long-game revenge plot for a decades-old heartbreak? We want to hear your thoughts. Do you believe the feds will unseal an indictment before the year is out, or will the family, once again, manage to ride out another storm? Drop your take in the comments below. If you're hooked and want part 2 the minute any new documents surface, hit that like button. And please, share this with anyone who still genuinely thinks the tape story ended back in 2007, because if Ray J is telling even half the truth, we might just be watching the very first chapter of an empire on trial.